Water retention and TRT, what really causes it? And is E2 fairly blamed? We're here with a special guest, and we'll have more about this topic after this, so keep watching. So we're here today with our special guest, Nelson Virgil from Excel Male, and we're here to talk about water retention and TRT. So Nelson, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks a lot for having me again.
Very good. Always good to see you, Nelson. So Sam's not here with us today. So Nelson, the topic that comes up a lot in TRT, I tend to think in younger men, but can happen in men of all ages, is when they start, particularly injections, they feel like I'm puffy. I look puffy. I look bloaty. I've got some water retention. And many times the first initial reaction is, oh, it must be my E2 is high, elevated, and therefore maybe I should, kind of block that or minimize that. What are your thoughts on this? And is that the right target to focus on, or are we looking at something else?
Well, I've been, as you know, Excel Male has been going on for 12 years. We have almost 40,000 members from all over the world. So I get to read a lot of comments from all over and constantly. I mean, the chatter is pretty active every day. So not only I get to read papers, but I also get to see and experience what men all over the world are talking about. And the first thing, not the first thing, obviously, we have different issues with testosterone. We all know the benefits of testosterone replacement, so I'm not gonna go into that. That's pretty obvious. But there are some side effects that are not well understood yet. We understand that the main side effect of testosterone, especially in higher doses and injections, is increase of red blood cells and hematocrit, which can increase blood viscosity, eventual issues with cardiovascular risks and all that. But one of the least talked about is water retention. Some guys feel puffy, they gain a lot of weight quickly, and they know it's not muscle. They're working out, they're doing everything right, they're eating, sometimes eating well enough and clean, but they gain, a lot of weight, 10, 15 pounds. Here in the States, we talk about pounds. And they're kind of like wondering why they're gaining all this weight, and they feel puffy. Their hands, their faces start grinding up a little. Their pants, are tighter. And they usually think is estradiol, E2. So they don't even test it. Here in the States, we're lucky to have, you can get your own blood test. I have a company called discountedlabs.com where you can buy your own test without a doctor's visit, and it's pretty economical. But anyways, most guys don't test their estradiol. They assume they have high estradiol. So the first thing they do is they try to get an anastrozole, which is an aromatase inhibitor, thinking that lowering the estradiol, which may be high, but they don't really know, decreases water retention. I've been around forever, for 30 years. I've used testosterone for maybe 34 years or so. I do have water retention issues that come and go, so I'm not completely exempt from that, and I'm going to explain why. Because I'm not as strict with my diet sometimes. But anyways, and what we have found, I've read several papers, so I'm kind of obsessed with the subject myself, is that it increases, testosterone increases sodium retention. Much like growth hormone. Growth hormone can increase water retention, what we call extracellular water outside the cells. Testosterone can do the same. The combination of the two can even worsen that situation. So we know that GH, growth hormone, doesn't really have a strong effect on estradiol. Testosterone obviously can aromatize to estradiol. But most guys are obsessed thinking that estradiol is a main factor, not only for water retention, but also for moodiness. Anytime their nipples start itching or getting sensitive, they think that that's an estradiol issue. That's debatable. We can talk about that later. But the fact is that unless you test your estradiol and make sure that it's high, and we can go into discussions what really is high estradiol, because obviously no studies have been done on the actual estradiol range for a man on testosterone replacement. Most of those ranges that you see in the lab are derived from men with moderately kind of low testosterone anyway. So anyways, I'm getting around and around. But sodium retention, it increases. Why? We don't know. There's actually a study that looked at men on growth hormone They gave them testosterone, and they did an arm only of testosterone. They saw water retention on all arms. The worst one was obviously testosterone growth hormone. But what they have really seen, especially kidney specialists, is that it affects the way the kidneys get rid of salt in your body. Sodium is salt, basically. And it androgens, not only testosterone, actually, most androgens, even DHEA has some effect on that. Even anabolic steroids that have no estradiol conversion have that issue. Can affect the way kidneys get rid of that sodium. Okay, and 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 nobody really understands there's actually a gene in the tubules of the renal tubules called angiotensinogen gene that gets activated. Nobody knows why. So what happens is that sodium starts building up, and the body tries to compensate for that higher sodium level by increasing water retention, by diluting sodium. So we start holding more water. You could take a diuretic that your doctor can prescribe. Diuretics are prescribed for blood pressure, but they also have a side effect. Long-term use of diuretics can increase erectile dysfunction. The best way to lose water retention is to decrease salt intake, decrease sugar intake and sweets, because insulin actually increases water retention too and worsens that situation. Drink more water so you can actually dilute down the sodium in your blood. Cardiovascular exercise. Every time I skip the gym for more than 4 days, I start holding up more water, flushing those cells, right? Um, Minimizing alcohol. Alcohol is like a carbohydrate also. Sweating more, and decreasing your testosterone dosage. Really, I mean, once you go beyond 100, 150 milligrams a week, that's when things start at least happening in my case and most guys. The studies that we show is that if you keep testosterone at 100 milligrams or below, well, usually it's 100 or more that you need, your water retention is not as severe or not at all. Some guys, it actually affects everybody. It affects young guys, older men, but men, especially older men with cardiovascular issues, with they already have a little bit of a blood sugar issue or lipids, high cholesterol, they tend to have even more problems. So I see guys that are holding up so much water that they see marks when they take their socks off, or they have swelling of their ankles. That really scares me. That actually tells me there's a vascular issue going on with their cardiovascular system, and they need to go to a cardiologist because that really severe edema, right? So it is. There are many degrees of water retention, testosterone. Um, when it gets really bad in my case, I know why my water retention gets worse. Because I do like my tequila, I like my chips in Texas. I'm in Houston, Texas. I eat well, but sometimes I eat more carbs than I should, or more salt than I should. So I'm very aware when that happens. And there are instances where nothing works except taking a diuretic just once to lose a lot of that water.
Any benefit have you seen from an angiotensin 2 inhibitor? Would that not?
Yeah, none of those actually decrease water retention as much as the diuretic. Yeah, the diuretic is instant. It's within 4 hours you're peeing. You have to be careful because some of them actually deplete potassium, and that's something else that some guys on XLML have been talking about. Increase your potassium intake. And potassium tends to balance sodium also. Like eat more bananas, and you can Google potassium-rich foods and concentrate on that. Whether or not that actually works in my case, it doesn't work. I'm an old timer. I'm a 61-year-old man, 34 years on testosterone. I have other health issues, medical issues, as you can Google my name and see. So I am not your typical testosterone user, right? So I remind people that some of us may have more issues than others, but most people are happy. Most guys are happy at 100, 150 milligrams a week. They don't have water retention. They feel great, and more sex drive, and more, obviously their erectile function improves, their mood improves. But I would say 10 to 20% of men are usually in the first few months. There's also a homeostasis, a balancing that happens through the first few months. The same thing with hematocrit. It's almost like they go hand in hand. If you have, usually the guys with a lot of water retention have also dramatic increases in hematocrit and red blood cells, and they require more blood donations. than those that do not. So it's still an emerging field. Nobody's really, when you look and you Google or do a Google Scholar search on edema testosterone or edema, androgens, there's very little that comes up. And a few of the studies will always show that there's this kidney dysfunction when it comes to salt. The body's trying to readjust the balance of blood volume. I think, in my point of view, as a hypothesis, I think the blood is trying to dilute the increased red blood cells that happen as a consequence of testosterone to decrease, to improve viscosity, but nobody has really proven it.
Do you think this happens more predominantly with injectables compared to topicals like gels or creams?
I'm 100% sure, yes. Because topicals don't ever, they don't reach as high of T level or DHT level either. The DHT effect is kind of questionable. We don't have data on the effect of DHT on water retention. Estradiol, I'm not saying estradiol doesn't cause it. I'm not at all. The interesting thing though is that women, I read a study of women on contraceptives tend to lose a lot more sodium in their urine than not. Okay, so, and contraceptives are basically estrogen based. So that actually contradicts the fact that estrogen may increase water retention. So that's something that we as men, I think we've always assumed that women, when they take estrogen, they tend to get puffy and also hold a lot of water. So there's controversy there. Another thing that testosterone does is it decreases peptide, a hormone called aldosterone, that keeps water balance and sodium balance and calcium. So there are many things that researchers and clinicians are not talking about that testosterone changes. I really believe, and obviously I didn't believe this many years ago because I used to do higher doses. I used to do nanolone. Obviously, I have a book on steroids. So as I become older, obviously I become more conservative, okay? And there are many reasons why. My blood pressure goes up when water retention goes up. And that's something that is not very good for somebody that's 61 years old. So I tend to believe that doing higher doses of testosterone, especially if you combine it with anabolics, and having a lot of water retention and blood pressure issues is an indicator that eventually you're going to pay the price cardiovascularly. Yeah. Yes, you can get on blood pressure meds. You can do, different things to manage that. That in combination with increased red blood cells and hematocrit and viscosity of the blood is really a bad basically synergy basically of bad factors. So I know people want to be muscled, energy. I mean, I'm a muscular guy, obviously. I'm not judging at all. I mean, I've done it before. But as I become older, I believe older men, especially older men like myself, 50s, 60s, even 70s, should be more careful about dosing, about keeping the blood pressure in check, the water retention in check, and their hematocrit, their red blood cells in check. Estradiol, in my point of view, guys are obsessing about that too much. We don't know what a typical or normal or optimum testosterone to estradiol ratio is. 0.4% of testosterone becomes estradiol for a good reason. Being evolutionary, I mean, through evolution, we have developed that as a protection. Estradiol increases HDL cholesterol, the protective cholesterol. It improves dilation of the vessels. It prevents cardiovascular issues. It actually has some effects on the brain, in libido. So estradiol is not an evil thing. And estradiol will decrease your water retention. We have not a single study.
This is what happens. You struggle with this puffiness and this bloatiness, and you're just looking for something for it to go away when you're right, maybe the dose was too high.
Any clinic can do a small study. Even Lipschultz, I'm trying to get in convince your Baylor, your medical school, to do a study. Just a bunch of guys are complaining about water retention. And by the way, there are many ways to know about water retention. Yeah. I have a method. I have a ring, my wedding ring. I always, every day, it's like, okay, shit, I'm holding water. And I weigh myself every morning, and I can gain 4 pounds of water within 3 days if I eat chips and, a lot of Mexican food, I have my tequila, it's amazing. I mean, 4 or 5 pounds of water, that's before breakfast, right? So I know I'm always constantly, I go to the gym, and as soon as I get out of the gym, I check my ring. Okay, it's moving better. So I'm always checking my water balance, right? Because I hate feeling bloated. Also, my face gets a lot more bloated than it is already. So the estradiol thing, I've checked my estradiol. It's not higher when I'm bloated.
Yeah.
And I have access to sensitive estradiol. My estradiol is usually in the 20s.
Yeah.
So obviously my case is different. I took an estradiol, didn't do nothing. It decreased my sex drive. That's about it.
Oh, that's not
But
good.
it's so easy to just give a bunch of guys an estradiol. Don't overdose them, maybe 0.25 a week or max 0.5, and see if they lose water weight and how they feel. Easy as pie. It'll be nice to have a control group.
Yeah.
And that's it. Nobody has done that study.
That's something we might have to do then.
Hey, they're one of your doctors in the UK to do it.
Yeah, definitely. We could.
Yeah.
I've got a good PhD friend that could crunch the numbers. So.
Beautiful master thesis.
Yeah. No. Well. Yeah. He's got his own company called Nova Helix. So, there's a plug for him and his biochemistry company. Interesting. Well, look, when I was younger, I'd say back around 2009, and prior to that, around 2006, 2007, I noticed I went on a trip to Italy. I also, I think I ended up reading that study where you do 600 milligrams of testosterone as your last good amount of time. I didn't want to bring my medications to Italy from where I was. And so, I'm having pasta. I wasn't doing the gluten-free diet, lots of wine. And I was so bloated. I think I'll put a clip up of how I looked. And then, I started focusing about 3 weeks later when I came back home, doing more cardio. I watched the diet, watched how much sodium I had in the diet. But then I think I took it to the opposite extreme, where then I was getting some symptoms of too low of sodium as well. It became this obsession where I was so tired and no energy. I just didn't feel really good in my mind. And I think I took it, I was avoiding all sodium altogether. And I would say, years later then, once I worked out, I started getting worried about it. I think there's a combination of when I had Provarin added to my regime. I was using smaller doses of injectable testosterone. Things seemed to even out, and eating a fairly reasonable diet. Now, I've noticed as I started thyroid treatment, this so-called puffiness of the face minimized. And I don't think the puffiness was just water. I think it was myxedema, based on what I noticed with the treatment. And that, now I think my face looks a lot leaner. I'm quite happy, and I'm not really worried about, the bloatiness, from the treatment. But you're right, there's HGH is part of it. At the time, nandrolone was prescribed to me, injectable testosterone, cypionate. It was all leading to that, plus not the healthiest diet.
So you started thyroid and you got better thyroid treatment? Is that what
well,
you
I
said?
got better well before that, but I think that was the icing on the cake. Was when when I focused on the diet, removed the sodium, it got better. I've got a picture here I'll show you. And then years later, it was okay. There were times when even after the diet was right, not quite, and maybe because I got the beard, it makes my face look a bit more chiseled, but it wasn't quite right. And when I can see a dramatic difference, I think, from when I went from no thyroid to having thyroid treatment, just even 3 years ago, it's made a lot of difference as far as that. And we've had some patients also complain about the puffy face, went on thyroid treatment, and their face looked a lot better from what the parents had told them.
That makes sense, actually. That makes sense. So thyroid is also involved in water homeostasis of water balancing and sodium. So I'm going to look into that, but that makes a lot of sense. And also it helps burn fat also.
No, it doesn't hurt, but yet on the warning labels on the package leaflet, oh no, it shouldn't be used for weight loss. Okay, well, yeah, if it helps you, we don't want to help you too much. That would be would be a PED, I suppose. So thanks again, Nelson, for joining us for another good episode. And if you like the content on today's video, please hit the like button. That really helps the algorithm. And if you would like to comment, we appreciate your comments, so please leave those. And if you have any ideas for new videos, we're more than happy to hear what those are. Again, if you can subscribe to the channel, that helps a lot. and we hope you enjoy the content today. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.